I'm talking at you while I'm on mute. My apologies, everyone. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Mental Health Conference titled Heal the Family, Heal the Nation, sponsored by the Hope Center of Carmody Hills and Carmody Hills Baptist Church. My name is Anna Reaper. I will be the moderator for today's conference. I am a graduate student in the Clinical Mental Health Counseling program at Northwestern University, located in Chicago, Illinois. Since this is a virtual conference, please feel free to put comments and questions in the chat. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for today's conference. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Joanne Frederick, the Executive Director of the Hope Center of Carmody Hills. Dr. Joanne Frederick, also known as Dr. J, is a licensed professional counselor in DC, Virginia, and Maryland. She is the author of Copeology, a book that helps people deal with topics such as loss and grief, managing survivor's guilt, and the power of prayer, to name a few, from a spiritual and psychological perspective. She currently serves as a mental health therapist in the private sector and in the nonprofit sector, as the CEO and lead therapist at JFL and Associates Counseling, and, as I mentioned, as the executive director at the Hope Center of Carmody Hills. Her philanthropy work is featured in media outlets such as the Toronto Sun, CNN.com, WFTV Channel 7, Central Florida, WJLA ABC 7, Washington, D.C., 7 at 7 Las Vegas, Allure.com, Today.com, Black News Channel, and The Gria, just to name a few. In addition, she is an adjunct professor at the George Mason University, a mother of 3, and a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Her motto is, "Let's talk." Let's welcome Dr. Joanne Frederick.
Thank you, Anna, for such a great introduction. I'm here to deliver the keynote address for you all this morning. Our nation is in a serious crisis right now. We are faced with social injustices, discrimination, financial hardship, gun violence, domestic violence, disease and viruses, grief, suicide, loss, trauma, and war, to name a few. But don't worry, there is hope and healing. We are one family. When we heal the family, we heal the nation. As quoted in the English Bible, therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Thus, we are here today to present to you the 2022 virtual mental health conference titled Heal the Family, Heal the Nation. Thank you.
Up next, we will have Pastor Joseph Graham presenting on the mental health needs of children. Pastor Graham is the founder of Road to Damascus Campus Outreach at UNC Charlotte, which later gave birth to the Road to Damascus Christian Church, also referred to as RTD. Pastor Graham is the CEO of Equity on Everything, LLC, which provides consultation on how to address and solve the problems of inequities in education, both K through 12 and higher education, inequities in the workplace, inequity in the criminal justice system, and inequities when it comes to mental health awareness. As the Associate Director for Instructional Liberation for the Village of Wisdom, he helps to build culturally affirming learning environments by amplifying Black parent voices and establishing school and community partnerships. He is an agent of change in ministry, education, criminal justice, and mental health awareness. He is an advocate, a speaker, a facilitator, educator, artist, songwriter, and performer. He will be releasing a new book entitled Light Up, a guide to how to have faith and mental health counseling. And he is very excited to be in dialogue with everyone this morning. Welcome, Pastor Graham.
Greetings. Can everybody hear me and see me? Okay. Excellent, excellent. All right. So first of all, I want to show thanks to Dr. Joanne for making this possible and being able to be an opportunity and a space at the intersection of faith and mental health. And so when I think about faith and mental health and our children, because I do such a work in equity in education, I'm often confronted with the reality that our children, especially our underprivileged and marginalized groups, are suffering at school, not only because of implicit bias, not only because of discrimination and racism, but also because even dealing with the pandemic and problems at home and not having an outlet and somebody to talk to, children have been suffering in silence. And the need for them to have someone that they can communicate with about their struggles is a growing reality, but it's hard to conquer when their parents are people who avoid getting the mental health support and counseling that they need. And so what I've been doing with some of my partners, I'm on the Mental Health Advisory Council for Durham Public Schools. And what we've been trying to do is encourage wraparound services for families where we are inviting parents who normally would not go to mental health counseling, inviting them into the space where they can have somebody to talk to. And many times we do it under the guise of saying that it's going to be something beneficial for your children. And what usually ends up happening is that as the therapist is discussing strategies and providing tools of dealing with adversity to the children, the parents end up applying those tools to their lives as well. And what we've been witnessing is parents who started a connection with counseling for their children, it ended up opening the door for them to go to counseling as well. And so that has been a benefit that's been happening regarding the connection of mental health for children and it becoming a better reality even for parents. But I'm also an advocate in saying all right, yes. I'm also an advocate for saying that that when we talk about building culturally affirming spaces in classrooms for our children, a lot of times people look at some of the equity and education situations in school as though it's separate from mental health, but it is. It's not separate. It's very connected. There is no way that a person can think that growing up in an environment where the racial and the historical relevance of your people is not something that's talked about, or for you to be told that the beginning of history for your people is it starts with slavery. We have underestimated the impact of even racial history having on our children. And it's amazing that right now it's made national news that you have political parties that are trying to erase the idea of talking about the honest history of racism in America, and trying to create a situation where that doesn't get addressed. And what we must realize is that if we allow it to become normal, to erase the truth about the struggles that have happened in this country, then we also we make the voices that are talking today about what Black children and brown children are dealing with today is basically making them mute and closing the mouths of young people that are expressing the problems and the struggles that they are having in life. And so school cannot be used as yet another tool to make mute what's going on in the minds of our children that causes social and emotional struggles for them. And so it is a major deal for every social agency, whether it be churches, whether it be social services, whether it be schools, that we begin to spend more time listening to what is going on in the lives of our children. And not only our K through 12, but even when it comes to our young people in colleges. I know at UNC Charlotte, there was a major issue with suicide at one time. And so I had started a campus outreach through Road to Damascus. And what we did is we partnered with the counseling service on the campus, and we had what we call weekly meetings that were titled Power Hour. And they were designed for young people to come into a safe space and to hear about and to hear about some strategies. First of all, to listen to them express what they were struggling with. And that's the thing. Even when it comes to the politics dealing with education, where obviously so many of our children are at in the school system, so many organizations, so many institutions come up with these so-called initiatives. But when you ask them, what have the young people actually said about what they're going through, many of them don't know, because we're big about creating initiatives for a demographic that we don't always ask, how do you feel? What does life look like from your lens? And so all too often, children is the group that everybody likes to use as a political stunt to say they're here to help, but oftentimes they're not heard. I saw somebody text me about questions being asked. I'm one that I don't like to just talk, but I would love to entertain some questions that people may ask about mental health. And so if anybody has any questions to ask, then please feel free to do so. Because it's actually the questions getting addressed that brings about necessary information. So if anybody has any questions regarding the mental health needs of children, then please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Or even if one of the other presenters or anyone on the call has a question, I would love to address it. Okay, I see something in the chat. Okay, no questions as of yet. All right, excellent.
Was what resources do you recommend for parents to utilize to help their children? Are you still with us?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, the last thing I wanted to say, since we're talking about children, is a phrase I often say is this: the skeletons in the closets of our parents often become the imaginary friends that our children play with. And what I mean by that is the issues that parents like to pretend don't exist and they leave unaddressed have a sneaky way of showing up in the lives of our children. And even though we may have hidden some parts of our story to our children, they have a funny way of manifesting themselves in the decisions that our children make. So we would do a better service for our children by being transparent about our lives, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, so that when challenges show up in their lives, instead of making our children feel alienated and they hide those things from you, the same way you hid your struggles from them, we can have a transparent conversation that can actually lead to healing.
Those are some powerful words, Dr. Graham. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see another question in the chat saying, if you know something going on, but when asked, they say nothing, but you can see it, how do you help? So I think we're
That's a
talking
great.
about you can see it on the child, but they're denying it.
That's very good. And so, depending on what it is that you're detecting, um, sometimes when you've gone direct at a child and asked them what's happening and they deny it, then you have to find a way to indirectly be in their space and offer a means of comfort that does not explicitly target what your concern is. What I mean by that, and this is going to sound very generic, but sometimes just quality time. Sometimes a child hides something because they don't have a level of comfortability. They may feel judged or embarrassed. And so I always tell people, don't underestimate quality time with your young people. Doing something that seems very unattached and unassuming, like going out and getting some ice cream, checking out a show on Netflix that they like, going to do something that they like to do, or a simple walk through the park or a store. Those things mean a lot. And what'll happen is, what I've learned, people don't care how much you love until they know how much you care. And quality time has a way of saying I care without it being you, without the words.
Thank you, Pastor Graham, for that wonderful presentation. Up next, I would like to introduce Dr. Charlene Allen Milton, who will be presenting on the mental health needs of women. Dr. Allen Milton is a Caribbean American native of New York City. She is a wife and mother to one daughter. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in social work from Morgan State University, a Master of Clinical Social Work degree from Smith College, and a Doctor of Education degree in Human and Organizational Learning from George Washington University. She is a licensed certified social worker, clinical. Uh, Having worked as a clinical social worker for over 18 years, Dr. Ellen Milton possesses a wealth of experience working with individuals experiencing social emotional challenges. She is CEO of Honoring the Whole You, LLC, and serves as an assistant professor at the School Social Work and the School Social Work Concentration Chair within the School of Social Work at Morgan State University. She is the author of Honoring the Whole You, Everyday Work-Life Management Strategies for Professional Moms and Caregivers. Whether in the role of mother, wife, church member, professor, or work-life management strategist, Dr. Ellen Milton's motto is to educate, equip, and support. Please welcome Dr. Charlene Allen Milton.
Muted. Hello, sorry about that. And thank you so much for that introduction. I'm so glad for the opportunity to be here. I want to first say thank you so much to Dr. Joanne Frederick, as well as the Hope Center of Carmody Hills. And I would not be remiss if I did not greet and thank Dr. Reverend Oscar Brody for your work that you and Dr. Joanne are doing in the Pepper Mill in the Baltimore, PG County area. And greetings to the rest of the panelists. I am here to talk to you today about the mental health needs of women. And in the line of work that I do, um, the mental health needs of women, despite the whatever uh, ailment might be plaguing, affecting, whatever challenge might be happening, it appears to equate to self-care, right? We need self-care in the world that we're living in today, when we are working full-time, part-time, we're caretakers, we are spouses, we have responsibilities to families, friends, organizations, the work domain. We need self-care in order to manage work and life, despite the stresses that we have. And so that's pretty much what I am here to talk about today. And I'm thankful to to Reverend Curtis for assisting me with my slides. And so today we're going to be focusing on self-care. Do I have to okay. So when we think about mental self-care, it's mental wellness, and that's why we are here today. Through 3 John 2 says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers." And you know what? God desires for us to prosper, not only financially, not only in material abundance, but also in our soul, which is our psychological, mental, emotional, and social well-being. We have the right to prosper there, but why don't we give it the attention that it needs, right? Why don't we give it the attention that it needs? Could it be that we don't give it the attention that it needs because we don't think that we deserve that attention? We don't think that we deserve to put ourselves first, right? But we see where it is a desire. It is a desire for us, a divine desire, that we be in health, right? Not only in good health, not only experiencing material prosperity, but also psychological, emotional, and social um, prosperity. One of the things that I say is that you can't pour from an empty cup. And so we often do so many things all at the same time, but how do we replenish ourselves? And that's pretty much what I am here to talk about today. Mental wellness equals soul health, right? So the soul is considered, we are tripart beings. We got the physical, we have the spiritual, and then we have the soul, right? Which is made up of our mind, our will, and our emotions. And so that's where we are going to focus today. Now, before I go into self care and its various domains, you know, part of self care, a big part of self care involves boundaries. And I pause because a lot of times we as women may struggle in this area. And we may struggle in this area because we don't want, because of what people may think, right? But you know what? If we are struggling, we can't care about what people think when we set limits because we have to care for ourselves. One boundary is setting priorities. And guess what? I'm here to tell you that it is okay to put you as a priority. It's okay. It's time for us to stop putting ourselves on the back burner and taking care of everyone else. We're burnt out, we're stressed out, um, and we're pouring from an empty cup, which leaves us stressed out, probably irritable, right? And cranky. But it's okay to make yourself a priority. It's okay to put a line that marks a limit that says no. You know, one of the things about boundaries is that it keeps the good in and keeps the bad out, right? Another thing about boundaries is that it protects us, right? Boundaries protect us mentally, physically, emotionally, and psychologically from stressors when we set boundaries, okay? You know, and when we set boundaries, that can actually de-stress us. And so, you know, I challenge you to think about areas where you need to put boundaries and and just say no in whatever variation it comes in, right? I'm not able to do that at this time. My schedule doesn't allow it at this time. You know, um I don't have it. However, whatever variation of no you can find, I challenge you to think about where boundaries need to be set and to set them. A boundary sometimes sometimes people will say, "Well, what about the children?" Well, you could train your children to say, "Mommy is going to have some quiet time." You can train your children and your spouse and family members not to open the door of the bathroom without knocking. Oh my gosh, let me tell you something. I'm a first time mom. God bless me to have a child at 42 and get married at 43. And I didn't know that the bathroom would become the new meeting place. Oh my goodness. But anyway, I had to set boundaries and sometimes we need that time to just to be quiet, right? And so let's go into self-care. You know, a lot of times people think that self-care involves, oftentimes we think about self-care and we see women with their heads wrapped in towels and their eyes closed and like, oh, this is so great. But that is just one form of self-care, right? When you go to the spa, you take care of yourself emotionally so you can feel relaxed, right? That's one form of self care. But there are other types. There is the mental and intellectual, there's the physical, there's spiritual, emotional, financial. And another type of self care is finding your tribe. And I'm going to talk about all of these areas, right? And so when we think about the physical aspects of self-care, and if there are any comments, I'm more than willing to answer them at the end. But or comments or questions, I'm more than willing to address them at the end. But when we think about the physical aspects of self-care, this is where we are focusing on the health conscious activities, body movement. People say exercise. I prefer body movement, moving your body for a specific amount of time. This includes getting proper rest, right? 6 to 8 hours of rest. This includes eating properly. Some of us, how many of us get proper rest? How many of us have used your benefits to seek out a nutritionist to talk to you about the foods that you should be eating? Not only the foods that you should be eating, but the quantity that you should be eating. All right. What about healthcare? Now, a lot of times, in being a social worker, I've seen people, and being a social worker and a therapist, I've seen people who do not have a primary care physician, and they use the emergency room as their doctor's office. And a lot of times people don't know, these individuals may or may not know that you are supposed to get an annual physical, that you are supposed to get an eye exam every 2 years, that you are supposed to see the dentist. And based on what's happening, you're supposed to see the dentist every 6 months. If you have insurance, insurance will pay for this. And not only that, if you have insurance, you pick a primary care physician that is close to you in your community, that gives you specific attention, such as making not only giving you a, a a physical, but checking your blood work to see if all of your cholesterol, uh, glucose levels, I was going to say sugar levels, glucose levels, vitamin D, very important to make sure all of these levels are up to par. And if not, give you the proper treatment. In the emergency room, it is crisis. The only thing that they are going to do is stabilize you and send you home. So if you don't have a PCP, get one. Now, there is the mental and intellectual side. Mental and intellectual self-care is engaging in activities that stimulate you mentally or intellectually. Coming to this conference is one of them. Listening to your favorite podcast is another one. Pretty much taking an online class, listening to a book, an audio book, reading a book, pretty much things that stimulate you mentally, having stimulating conversations, taking a class. Community colleges have classes that are pretty inexpensive, and you can do this to stimulate you mentally and intellectually. The next piece is spiritual. You know, as I mentioned earlier, the spiritual aspect is another aspect of self care. Our spirit needs to be attended to. And when your spirit is attended to, that you tap in to your God self, your God potential. You actually begin you spark the bi-directional flow or relationship between you and God. And how do you engage in self-care? You do that by praying, by communicating with God. You do that by having quiet time and listening to what God may say. God speaks through his Holy Spirit, and he can speak to you and give you direction, give you peace, give you wisdom if you would ask. There is also attending, your faith-based organization on whatever day that is assigned. There is also reading of spiritual materials, the Bible, listening to spiritual materials via YouTube. I know that Carmody Hills Baptist Church has a plethora of videos, as well as Carmody, the Hope Center has a plethora of videos to enhance one's spirituality. And when we prioritize this area, we get an increased sense of peace, clarity, comfort, as well as direction. So I'm giving you opportunities to see where it is that you would like to improve, opportunities to see what aspects of self-care you think are a little bit that needs improvement, and improve upon them, as well as if there are areas that are already improved, how can you even strengthen those even the more. Now, the other area of self-care is emotional. We must, it is necessary to attend to our emotional selves. Do you do a check-in and ask yourself, how are you feeling today? Do you have a therapist? Do you have a coach where you are able to feel vulnerable and work out unresolved conflict, unresolved issues of the past? This is where, in with a therapist, you are able to talk about secrets. I know that the first presenter, we are no good. The first presenter mentioned this. We are as good as our secrets, you know and a lot of times people in the African American community have a lot of secrets that impacts their behaviors, which impacts, as the first presenter said, how they parent their children. But we, having a therapist, can help you unresolve these things, right? And not only unresolve these things, but help you to realize that in certain areas, the way you behave is because you are being discipled by a defense mechanism. And once you deal with that, you can now learn how to cope in a positive way instead of the way um, that you learned to be in an effort to protect yourself. Let me just say that. Now, there is also financial. Now, listen, I don't mean to say rub on anybody's toes, but do you know that attending to your finances is an area of self-care? Nobody wants to be stressed out because they have more going out of their home than they have coming in, that they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But you know what? Part of self-care is looking at areas that we don't want to look at. And sometimes it could be the mental, it could be the physicals, it could be spiritual, emotional, but it also could be our finances. Financial literacy is so important. And there are so many free financial literacy programs, groups that you can attend, financial literacy videos that you could look at on YouTube. I remember watching Oprah Winfrey, and she had Michael Jordan on her show. And she asked a question because she had heard that his mother um, that she had heard that Michael Jordan lives on a budget. Now, Michael Jordan is at least a millionaire, if not a billionaire, right? He has his own section of Nike. You would think that, he spends what he wants when he wants because he can. But what he said on that show was his mom taught him how to live by a budget. And so he lives on a budget regarding how much money he makes. How many of us can say that we live on a budget? How many of us can say we know what's going in? We've allotted monies for this, we've allotted monies for that. How many of us can say that? How many of us make sensible financial decisions? And how many of us live within our means? How many of us prepare for short and long term range goals and emergencies? You know, um, that is very important. There is a person by the name of Dave Ramsey that talks about 5 baby steps, right? And I suggest that you go and check that out. The first baby step is to save an emergency fund. The second baby step is to pay off credit cards. And so there are other baby steps, and there's 5. And so I strongly suggest that you check out the Dave Ramsey baby steps. Now, I want to get to the last area of self-care, and that is finding your tribe. Now, finding your tribe aids in educating, equipping you, and uplifting you, validating who you are emotionally and mentally. There are 2 members of, I have several tribes, but there are 2 members of a tribe, of one of my tribes here today. It's Reverend Joanne and, excuse me, Dr. Joanne and Doc, Dr. Reverend J, right? Reverend J. They're part of my tribe. And then there are other parts of the tribe, but your tribe is where you can go and you can be vulnerable, you can let your hair down, you can laugh, you can be stress-free, and you are validated in return. It's a reciprocal relationship. And so some of these are your girlfriend girls night out. These are your emotional support communities. These are your organizations such as church, sorority, clubs, and the like. So I challenge you today to find your tribe, to look at the mental and intellectual selves. Are you engaging in self-care mentally, intellectually, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially? And have you found your tribe? I am going to stop here. And most of the things that I mentioned today are in my book, Honoring the Whole You. You can obtain this via Amazon, as well as you can reach out to me if you so desire at Dr. Charlene Allen and on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also, there's my contact information. So here I see someone says, if you know something going on, but when asked, they say nothing, you can see it. How can you help them? That's a good question. That's where you can be supportive, and you can leave an open door to say, pretty much, you say that nothing's going on. However, you show something differently, and I will be here, um, if you so desire, whenever you're ready to talk. All right. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening to this talk. And thank you so much for caring, engaging in self-care.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ellen Milton. We appreciate having you here with us today. Up next, I would like to welcome back Pastor Joseph Graham to talk to us about the mental health needs of men. We may need to move on to the next speaker for now, and we can have Dr. Graham back when he is able to join us again. So what we will do is we will move on to our presentation on the mental health needs of the family. So speaking to us on this subject will be Reverend Dr. J. Lynn Peabody Smith. She strives to be influential, inspirational, and impassioned. She is a preacher, teacher, trainer, and author. She is a licensed professional counselor who in 2014 started her own private counseling and consulting business, the Peabody Practice LLC. Reverend J earned a Master of Divinity in Pastoral Counseling and a Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health, and recently, a Doctor of Ministry in Pastoral Counseling from Mercer University. She also earned a Master of Public Administration with a concentration in Nonprofit Administration from New York University. She is a certified anger management specialist and a certified professional counseling supervisor. Reverend J has served in ministry for over 20 years. She accepted her call to preach at New Bethel AME Church in Lithonia, Georgia. She was licensed to preach in 2001 and ordained in 2004. Reverend J has served as a youth pastor and executive pastor in various churches. She is currently the executive pastor at Redemptive Life Christian Fellowship in Conyers, Georgia, where Dr. Mark Thompson, her father in ministry, is the senior pastor. Reverend J provides individual, family, couple, and group counseling. She works with adults in all demographics. She has presented workshops and led groups on a diverse segment of topics, including relationships, parenting, communication, self-esteem, abuse, grief, COVID, and much more. Reverend J has dedicated her personal life and her career to social justice and mental health access. She is passionate about abiding with people on their journey to emotional wholeness. In January 2020, she founded My Sacred Space. My Sacred Space is a faith-based nonprofit counseling organization providing free and affordable access to mental health services. Reverend J is also a published writer. Her latest book, Heels, Hearts, and Halos, Lessons on My Journey, is available on Amazon and on her website, www.thepeabodypractice.com. Jay is married to Tommy Smith. Together, they have a blended family of 7 amazing children. Please welcome Reverend Dr. J. Lynn Peabody Smith.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Dr. J, for inviting me. And if y'all don't have Charlene's book, I have it. It is amazing. So please go out and get that. So let's see. Let's just go ahead and get started. I'm going to be talking to you really quick about mental health needs and families, our role in the mental and emotional health of our family. How can we support, and some tips for increasing positive mental health. And that right there is my amazing, huge family. So they're silly. We're silly. Real quick, there's 2 things I want you to just to think about is when I say mental health, I really mean mental and emotional. Mental is how we process or how we think about it. and emotional is how we express. And oftentimes it's the how we express that can become a challenge. So, positive families increase positive mental health. That's what the gist of what I'm going to tell you about. I always say the emotions are contagious. So, when one person is happy, the rest of the family tends to be happy. When one person is having a struggle, we know about it. I also want to say that there are no perfect parents and no perfect children. There's just perfect moments along the way. As parents, we're not always going to get it right. And sometimes our children are going to get on our nerves. That's okay. Nobody's perfect, but we do want to strive to have perfect memories that they can call back on and relate to. A scripture I just wanted to start with were friends love through all kinds of weather and families stick together in all kinds of trouble. That is from Proverbs. And as wonderful as families, as friends are, and friends can become families, a major difference of a family is that we stick together even during the tough times. So, this looks kind of small. I'm just going to run through this real quick. You may already know a lot of this information, but these are just some of the signs to look for with a mental health crisis in the family. Um, Eating or sleeping too much or too little, pulling away from people and usual activities, having low or no energy, feeling numb like nothing matters, a lot of aches and pains, that feeling of helplessness or hopelessness, smoking, drinking, or using drugs more than usual. I often say if somebody says, or members of your family continue to say you're drinking too much, you're probably drinking too much, right? Feeling confused, forgetful, or on edge, yelling or fighting with family and friends, severe mood swings, persistent thoughts and memories that you can't get out of your head, hearing voices or believing things that just aren't true, thinking of harming yourself, or just getting irritable, right? Now, it's interesting because if you have teenagers, some of these things are going to happen naturally. They're going to want to stay in their room and be on their phone, or they might be going to a phase where they're sleeping or eating too much, or they're just kind of grouchy. But what we're looking for is when it's consistent and it doesn't get better. So when someone has a mental health issue, as a community, as family, we have to begin to name it, right? And talk about what's going on. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is when Jesus comes across the demon possessed man, and he says, "What is your name?" Right? Jesus knows his name. Jesus know everything. Um, but there was something about naming it. And so when we name what's going on, then we can cast out that problem or deal with that illness. And when we act like it's not there, it does not go away. It just presents itself. And so the other thing we want to do is have no judgment and offer lots of support, right? So if someone in our family is depressed, saying, well, you just have so much to be happy about, doesn't work. Depression is not really about being happy or being sad. It's about an emotional conditional in our brain and the way that we're processing and the way we're expressing it. So trust me, if they could snap out of it, they would, right? Learning all that you can. I have a child that is on the spectrum. He's living with autism. When we got that diagnosis, I dedicated everything I could to learning more about it. What does this mean? What does it look like? For some mental health crisis, there's going to be a crisis. If you're living with somebody who is living with bipolar, um, there might be that manic episode. And so, though we don't want to focus on the worst case scenario, we do want to be prepared for that worst case scenario. If you believe that your child or a parent is suicidal, what's the plan in place? Who are we going to call? What do we need to do? And get some therapy for yourself. I think everybody should go to therapy. I do. I have women that come to therapy and the first 10 minutes, they're just like, because they just want a place where they can breathe and no one is asking them about anything. I have men that come and we just talk about sports or whatever it is that they want to talk about for the first few minutes. Everybody needs a safe place where they can just process what's going on around them. Now, if somebody in your family has a treatment plan, for example, they're supposed to go to counseling, they're supposed to take medicine, encourage them. Don't nag them, but if they have a counseling appointment and it's not virtual, offer to give them a ride, be their support system. But don't let whatever the illness is become the center of the family. Again, our role is to offer love and support so that person can manage that illness instead of that illness managing them or the family. And try to remove all sarcasm. So, for example, I have adult ADHD. It presented itself when I was in seminary, and it mostly comes up in my writing. But it can also make me very forgetful or kind of on edge. And so, if someone in my family says, "Did you take your medicine today?" Like saying it kind of funny, it ain't funny. So, remove sarcasm. And just being able to listen. As members of a family, we want to jump in and fix it, but sometimes we can't. And sometimes the person doesn't need us to. They just need us to be there and to be in and to listen. So, how do we improve our mental health in families? Create a plan. So, if you have a Sunday dinner together, or if y'all are hanging out, call a family meeting and say, "Hey, we're going to decide as a family that our mental and emotional health is important. So let's talk about what we can do." Right? Create a plan, and we're going to revisit that plan. Get moving. When my kids were younger, and I felt like it was test time or things were, getting stressful, I would play some music. It'd be like, everyone just dance. Let's just dance for a minute or two and just get it all out. Or if somebody is frustrated, I tell them, go outside and play some ball and come back in when you're feeling better. Healthy eating, which is hard for everybody, I think. But what we put into our bodies matter. And get some sun. Go outside. A lot of us, because we've been inside for 2 years, we are suffering from a vitamin D deficiency, which actually can impact your mood as well. So when it's nice out, go outside. If you're just going to walk around the neighborhood, allow a timeout. So a timeout is when our kids are really little and we say, now you have to go to timeout. Well, I don't care how old you are. Everybody gets a timeout. When things are getting escalated, have a rule. You get to do this, timeout. It really only takes your body 20 or 30 minutes to calm down after you're mad. After that, we're just playing it over and over again. So look, take a timeout. Go to your perspective corners. Go for a walk. Just come back. And so anyone in my house is allowed to say, we could be in the middle of an argument, time out. Everyone goes where they got to go, depress, and come back. A routine is really important. Structure helps people to feel safe and like they have some control in their life. So that's important, especially routines that involve like time. That good quality time is important. It's not quantity of time, it's quality of time. So it's not how much time you're spending, but how you're spending that time. So a real cool example is if your child's birthday is December 2nd. So every second of the month, do something, spend time with that child. It could be like going to get ice cream or going to the movies or just having a really good heart-to-heart talk. But trust me, with 7, that comes in very helpful. We're all going to get frustrated. We're going to get mad. And it's okay to get mad. It's what we do with our mad that matters. So one thing we want to do is attack problems and not people. If you come home and the kitchen is a mess, instead of saying, you don't listen, you're a terrible child, that's attacking the person. We want to attack the problem. All right, y'all, how come the kitchen is not clean? And then what I do when the kitchen is not clean, that means I can't cook. And so it's a natural consequence. The other thing about timeout, when I used to work outside of the home, since I'm virtual now, I have a office in my home. When I would come in, I would turn the microwave timer to 30 minutes. And like nobody could talk to mommy until those 30 minutes went away. Because I needed time to just woosah and teach each other how to express feelings. Oftentimes, anger is a secondary emotion, meaning behind anger is pain or fear, right? So it's okay to get angry. It's how we talk about it. And we got to teach people to talk about it. Let's see. And then review that plan. So that plan that we came up with as a family, every now and then come back together, look at it, have it posted someplace. Let's talk about what we're doing right and what we could be doing different. So I wanted to, now you guys can Google this. It is an emotional chart. And so you just Google it and you hang it up someplace where everybody can see it. And then get like a stick pin and have a different color for every person in the family. And so put this like on like cork board or something, or on the refrigerator. And so when people come home, they put their pin where they're feeling. It helps for a couple of reasons. It really does help us to name whatever we're feeling. And then it also helps you to know what's going on with somebody else. And because everybody handles stuff different, so if somebody puts their pin on mad, all right, we know we're gonna leave that person alone for a few minutes and let them kind of calm down. If they are proud, we're going to be purposeful about asking them, okay, so what happened today? And if they are stressed, like if mommy puts it on stressed, they probably know you might want to give mommy some space today, right? But again, it helps us to kind of know how each other are feeling, and it really helps us to name emotions. A lot of our anger and frustration comes from our inability to name what's really going on. And I love to say, when somebody is angry, that anger is congruent to how much pain or fear they're experiencing. So it's just a little cool tool that we use in our house. I don't have it in the slide, but another great tool is love languages, the 5 love languages, and each kid probably has their own. So I see in the comments someone said they say nothing. I have recently seen communication improve with my son just by doing things that he enjoys together. Listen, I don't care what young people tell you. The one thing that they love the most is to spend time with you. I know they spend a lot of time locked in their rooms. I get it. But they love to spend time with you. And when you spend time, things just talk that happen naturally. It's funny because I love when kids like, what's wrong? Nothing. Clearly, we know something's wrong because we your mama or your daddy or your grandmama. And I think God works the same way, right? God will know that there's something wrong with us. And if we don't go and talk to God, God is there for us to do that. But sometimes, we got to be a little bit more creative. So yes, yes, yes. The idea of spending time really does make a difference. Thank you for sharing that. Just a quick word to parents and primary caregivers, whether it's grandma, grandpa, whoever. If you want to have good, positive health in your family, like Charlene said, you got to be your best self, right? When I'm my best self, again, emotions are contagious. Then I'm acting with good, healthy behaviors, and that kind of passes on through the family. If I'm stressed out and irritable and snapping at everybody because I'm not in a good place, that's going to impact my family. Um, Studies have shown that the mental health of children is connected to their parents' mental health, especially when it comes to trauma or adverse, right? So we got to take care of ourselves too. We got to deal with the trauma that we experienced in our own family of origin. Sometimes we like to say, well, that doesn't bother me, or I don't think about it anymore. But if you grew up with a parent who was absent, then you may be overly clingy with the people in your family, which doesn't allow them to grow. If you had a parent who was an alcoholic and you tried all the time to make sure that everything was okay so that parent wouldn't drink or get upset, you may be overly controlling in your family. So even though we say those things don't matter, they really do present ourselves. And then again, like our first presenter says, words do matter. What we say matters. It's interesting because in Genesis, when God was creating everything, it says God said, let there be light. God said. So the idea of saying and speaking things is important, and our words matter, so much so that the voice that the words that we say to our children become their voice in their head. So if we say they stupid, they grow up believing that they're stupid. They can be gifted and all of that. It doesn't matter. We've already put that voice in their head. If we say you constantly get on my nerves, then guess what? They're going to think that to the world that they are someone that bothers people, and they're going to revert back. If we tell them that they are wonderfully and beautifully made, if we tell them that you might make a mistake, but you're not a mistake, then that's the voice that they hear in their head. And so honestly, our relationship with our children impacts their view of God. If they see us as um, judging and harsh and not able to forgive, then that's how they look at God. If they see us as teachable, of wanting to teach and unconditional love, helping them to grow, then they often see God in that same way. So again, you talk about mental health and families, really got to talk about our being us being our best selves. So I don't know if we're taking questions or comments, but I'm done. That's all I have for you. I hope that's helpful.
All right. I don't see any questions from our audience members. But thank you so much for that wonderful talk, Dr. Jalen Peabody Smith. We appreciate so much having you here with us today.
My pleasure.
Next up, I'd like to check in and see if we have Pastor Joseph Graham back with us. Do we have Pastor Graham? All right. If not, then it looks like we should move on to our closing remarks for today. I am excited to present Joshua Jefferson, who will be giving our closing remarks.
Hello and good afternoon. I am Joshua Jefferson, a board member of the Hope Center at Carmody Hills Baptist Church. I wanted to personally thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your day to present and to the viewers to tune in and watch the presentations. On behalf of the Hope Center of Carmody Hills Baptist Church, I wanted to acknowledge the founder and senior pastor of Carmody Hills Baptist Church, Oscar L. Brody. And additional thanks to the president of Carmody Hills Baptist Church Hope Center, Pastor McLaughlin. Pastor Curtis McLaughlin. That's all.